The Pittsburgh Steelers are 10-point underdogs for Saturday night's wild card matchup against the Baltimore Ravens. And if you want to get in on the wild card action, BetOnline.ag is the place to do it. They have live in-game betting, over-unders, player props, spreads. Head over to get in on the action today over at BetOnline.ag. BetOnline, the game starts here. Welcome into the Bleav in Steelers show. My name is Mark Bergen. To get you ready for Saturday night's action, we had to keep it in the Bleav family yet again. We welcome in Daniel Wilcox. He is the host of Bleav in Ravens, former NFL tight end as well. And Daniel, we were just doing this here a few weeks ago, and yet here we are yet again, Steelers-Ravens round 3.
I was thinking the same thing, Mark. I feel like we just did this. Didn't we just do this in the We're right back at it, dog. We're right back at it.
Let's start there because we can get into Lamar and Mike Tomlin and the struggles of the Steelers. But I want to go to when you were a player, Daniel, of what it is like for a player to play a team 3 times in a season.
It's crazy, man. I think my last season, I think it was that exact same thing. You know, we went to the AFC Championship game that year, played the Steelers in the AFC Championship in Pittsburgh, and we knew it was going to be tough, man. Going into, at the time, it was Heinz Field. And we knew going into Heinz Field, it was going to be a fucking bloodbath. We already knew it. And we had already played you guys twice that season. And I can't remember, but I think we split that year too. Like, we won at home. You guys won at home. Now we're going to Pittsburgh to play you guys in Pittsburgh. And it was a freaking tough game, man. It was an all-out bloodbath from the opening snap to the last snap of the game. And it came down to the wire like it always does against us. And it was a tough game, man. It really was. And it's one of those things where you know the other team so well, you just don't know what they're going to throw at you this week. But you know they're going to throw some at you. And
my listeners and viewers will have this if I don't put this on, Daniel. It was a Steelers sweep that year. The first game, though, was an overtime game. I don't mean to rub it. I don't mean to rub that in your nose, but I know my listeners will have it. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I apologize.
No, it's all good. I was hoping it was a damn split because, you know, I never feel like I lost the game. You know, you get through this thing, you retire. You like, man, you remember losing that game? I'm like, no, I don't. I don't really remember losing ever. Like, I don't remember ever losing to the damn Steelers the whole time. So
let me point this out for people as well. As you've been on both ends of that. You're Super Bowl champion yourself as well. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, you've been on the other end of losing a playoff game to your rival as well. So it's like you've seen both sides of that coin during your playing career.
It's one of those things where I think you really, it's hard because that last game I played, I was in year 9, you know, and by that time you're an old head, you're a vet, you know, you get the VIP seat on the plane, you know, you get to sit in first class, you know, like they do that to the older guys as you get older. And you know you're officially old when they put you in the first class seats. You know, normally you got like a row by yourself in the back of the plane, you know. So I was at that point where I had the first class seat up front, you know, with me and Ray and, you know, those guys, Ed and all those guys. And it was in my 9th season. And I think one of the dynamics that you never truly think about as a fan is the difference in age of the rookies and the older guys. And then imagine being a rookie in your first year and you go to the playoffs your very first year, you think it's going to always be that way. And there's so much difference in mindset. You know, you got a bunch of young guys that are playing, you got a bunch of old veteran guys that are playing, and my team was a veteran team, you know, but you do have a sprinkle of young guys in there. And some guys take it extremely serious, and then some guys don't take it that serious because they think they're going to be back there next year. And I can remember, Mark, my rookie year in the league when I was in New York with the Jets, and Herm Edwards stood up in front of the team, the head coach, and he was like, guys, you know, the guys that are in this room, we had just finished training camp. The guys that are in this room are going to be the guys that are going to be on the team that's going to make the 53-man roster and the practice squad. This is your team. Look around, look to your left, look to your right. And then he said, I want to show you guys something. You know, before we start this season, I want you to know how hard it is to make the playoffs. And then he was like, if you ever played in the playoff game, stand up. And it was like maybe 15 guys that stood up. And that's a room with 65 guys. So it's like almost 5% of guys that made it. And then he was like, if you ever won a playoff game, stand up. Like 6 guys stand up. You ever been to a NFC or AFC championship? Stand up. Like 1 guy stands up in the room. And then he's like, you ever been to a Super Bowl? Stand up. Nobody in the room stands up, right? So here we are, my last season playing, we in Pittsburgh, and it's the AFC championship game. And I've been here before. And I was blessed to have been to an AFC or NFC championship game already. And we've won it before, and we've been in these situations with Pittsburgh prior. I think we lost 1 year to the Colts in the playoff, and Peyton Manning and the Colts. Then here we are going against Pittsburgh, like our nemesis. And we like, man, we lost to these guys twice already this year. So mentally, we already kind of mind F going into this place. Now we got to go at home at Heinz Field to play them. And it's nothing like going into Heinz Field, with the terrible towel and all the fans and the noise. And the fans are so amazing in Pittsburgh. They're so disciplined. They know when to scream and yell and shout. And they know exactly when to be quiet. And they help Pittsburgh tremendously. Like, we on offense, and I remember having like my hand over my helmet like this, because if you don't, the noise funnel through those ear holes in your pads and your helmet so loud that you can't hear anything. So I'm in the huddle just trying to hear the play call, so Flacco's calling the play, and I'm trying to hear the play call. I could barely hear him because it's so freaking loud. And then it's like, if you miss one bit of the play, then you're doing something totally wrong. It's too much riding on every single play and every single snap to miss anything. So you're breaking the huddle, just you running over the Flacco, just trying to double check before you run to the line of scrimmage. And, you're running out of time on every single play. It's such a tough environment to be in, man. And this is definitely going to be one of those environments. It's going to be cold as hell. It's going to be snowing. It's going to be in Baltimore at M&T Bank. We've already beat the Steelers once. The Steelers already beat us once. This shit could go either way. We know it. They know it. And then they got to come to our house to see it. And then it's just so much pressure riding on it. And then you have that variation from young guys to old guys on both teams. And it might not be that important to these guys as important it is to these older guys, So you got to get that mix just right, so that everybody's kind of really close or really tight to that same wavelength in order to pull this thing off.
Daniel, I say this is my opinion, Daniel, and this is with respect to the Arizona Cardinals, who the Steelers went on to beat the Super Bowl. That AFC Championship game that season between Steelers and Ravens was for the Super Bowl.
It was.
That's my opinion. Let me ask you this, too, before we go to the here and now. Is going into the playoffs that season, did you know that it would be your final season?
I did not. So it was interesting going into that season. I was coming off a major foot surgery that kind of happened like week 3 of the season prior. And the whole year, you going back and forth to the doctors, and the doctors are telling you it's turf toe or it's telling you it's something else, pinched nerve. Nobody knows what it really is. And every time you're trying to get past this injury, it kind of reassesses itself, like kind of affirm that, all right, you're injured, dude. You're not hurt. You're injured. Sit your ass down. Like, the injury will tell you, sit your ass down. And I fought back all that year to try to get back on the field because the injury happened so early in the season the year prior. And I ended up coming back like week 12, I think, against the Patriots or something like that. That was the year the Patriots were undefeated. And I remember coming back against the Patriots. I thought I scored the game-winning touchdown, and then Tom Brady does what he does with like a minute and 20 seconds left on the clock. He did that thing he does. So they end up winning again, and they still was undefeated leaving Baltimore. And then we went down to Miami, I think, like the next week, and got our asses handed to us in Miami. And Miami was the worst team in the league that year, I think. And then that season was over with. As soon as the season was over with, I had surgery immediately down in Charlotte with Dr. Anderson. Then I spent the whole offseason rehabbing, fighting back to get back on the field. They fired Brian Billick that year. John Harbaugh comes in over the offseason. And then he came in. I remember him interviewing us, talking to us about coaching and who we should keep on the staff, who we should get rid of. He actually asked a bunch of the older guys. He wanted to know our real opinions before he started hiring his staff and firing everybody that was there prior. And, he ended up keeping our coach, the tight ends coach, Wade Harmon. And then we went into that season. I missed all of training camp, Mark. I didn't practice one snap of training camp. My first day of practice was the first week of the regular season. The team was already made. Everybody was there already. And I remember them being kind of excited about how I moved around. They had never seen me move before until like the first week of the season. I started all 16 games that year. I was in pain every single game. I never really recovered from the foot surgery. I remember just feeling like I was a sitting duck. I had so much tape and all these contraptions taped up to my body while I was playing just to get me through every week. And I was doing these treatments every week prior to the game, every day prior to the game, just to feel like I was in adequate enough shape to go play the game, because I was so banged up and beat up. And every week there was a new injury compiled on top of the foot injury. It was a hamstring, it was a groin, it was this finger right here got torn off, the tendon got ripped off the bone. My shoulder, it kept telling me I had a pinched nerve in my shoulder. It ended up being a torn labrum and a torn bicep tendon in my shoulder. So like my whole left side of my body was like almost paralyzed with injuries. It was crazy. So I had no idea it was my last season, and I played every single game like it could be my last that year. And I remember making it to the AFC Championship game, and I had everything riding on it. I wanted to win the Super Bowl so freaking bad. The last time I had been to the Super Bowl was my second year in the season. And remember, the first year was the year Herm Edwards had everybody stand up. The one thing I didn't say about that story was Vinny Testaverde was on that team. He had been in the league at the time for I think 19 years.
Yeah, he played well into his 40s at the quarterback position.
Right. Yeah. So you got a guy that's been out there, that's been in the league for 20 years, and he couldn't stand up. He's never been to a playoff game, never won a playoff game, never won a Super Bowl, never been to a Super Bowl, and he had been in the league 20 years. Here I am in my second year winning the Super Bowl in Tampa. Here I am in my ninth season, my first time sniffing it or smelling it again, and I'm close to it. I'm right there. I'm one game away, but I had to go through Pittsburgh to get it, and it didn't work out in my favor. I remember walking off that field beat up, battered, torn up, body beat to crap, in pain, and kind of having my head down a little bit, but still trying to keep my head up because I had family in the stands. My oldest son, who's 19 now, I think he was 5 at the time, in the stands watching that game. He don't even remember that game, but he was there. I flew him up for the game, and my mom and her husband was there. I think my dad and his wife was there, and I had a bunch of people at that game, man. And I literally really thought, Mark, we was going to go to the Super Bowl that year. But when you're playing against James Harrison and Troy Polamalu and James Ferrier and all those guys, man, they had a whole different plan and story for us. And hell, we didn't make it. Make a long story short, you guys got a chance to get another one of those, what do you call them? The things that you put on your jackets, the patches. We got another patch to go on your Super Bowl coat, so it was pretty cool, man. It was a good experience. I had no idea that was my last game. And I walked away from that game, thinking like, shit, I got to get ready for next year. And my foot just never healed, just never got better. And I ended up deciding to hang up my cleats.
Man, terrific perspective. And thank you for sharing that, Daniel. You talk about the kind of the young guns where they get an early taste of playoff success, of Super Bowl success, and then what that means once you're an established veteran. So the here and now, this is kind of my first take topic for today is bigger game for Lamar or Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin. And I really don't think that there's a wrong answer, but we're going to kind of have this discussion of what this means to both players, because Jackson, 2-4 going into this game in the playoffs, but then Mike Tomlin, the 18 non-losing seasons, but the Steelers have not won a playoff game since January 15th, 2017. So the stage is set for Saturday night.
I'm going to say it's a bigger game for Lamar. He's a younger guy. There's so much. Like I was looking at some stats the other day. The first year we went to the Super Bowl in 2000, Dilfer was the quarterback. Ken Dilger, I think it was Dilger or Dilfer. Is it Dilfer or Dilger? Something like that. But he was the quarterback. He was 28 years old.
Is it Trent Dilfer?
Trent Dilfer. Yep. Yes. Trent Dilfer was the quarterback in 2000. They won the Super Bowl. And 12 years later, right, the Ravens go back. Joe Flacco's in his 4th season as a quarterback. He wins the Super Bowl. He was also 28 years old. Lamar just turned 28 last week, or this week. So Lamar is now 28 years old, and it's 12 years later from the last Super Bowl. Jacoby Jones passed away this year. He was number 12, so he was on the last Super Bowl team. He was a huge figure for us here. And they kind of, I know Lamar kind of dedicated the season to Jacoby, not even realizing that this was 12 years, the number 12 years later, after they won the last Super Bowl in 2012. Here we are in 2024. So I think Lamar has a lot riding on this, and I think he promised the city of Baltimore a Super Bowl when he first signed on draft day, and this is another opportunity for him back-to-back years with a team that's absolutely stacked, and we're pretty healthy. I mean, with the injury of Zay Flowers, and Justice Hill with the concussion, who I think will be back this game, we're pretty healthy for the most part. So I mean, to think that you're sitting here right where you were last year, not in a good a situation as you was in, but you still had a first round game last year too as well. You had a first round bye last year, and then you had a second round game at home and a third round game at home, the AFC Championship that you lost. So to be back in a situation again with a better roster, I think, than you had last season, I think a lot's riding on this for Lamar. I think this is kind of the thing that will kind of, staple him and signify him as one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game. And I think I even heard something about him changing his jersey number. If he actually wins the Super Bowl, he's going to change his jersey number to number 1, because that was the first jersey he ever wore when he started playing football. And I was like, that's kind of dope. So it's one of those things. I think it's really, I think it's more riding on it for Lamar in the history books than it is for Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin has won a Super Bowl as a Pittsburgh Steelers coach. He also won a Super Bowl with me down in Tampa Bay. So this will be Mike's third opportunity to get a Super Bowl. At the same time, I know he had to be sick and tired of hearing people, talking about him applying for other jobs. They were talking about him applying for the Chicago Bears. Why the fuck would you want to go to Chicago if you're Mike Tomlin and you in Pittsburgh?
They got to fill airtime, Daniel. I mean, it's an intriguing possibility, but the odds of that happening, I think pigs will fly before that happens, man.
Yeah, I would never leave Pittsburgh for Chicago. Why would you do that? I mean, Pittsburgh is a historical franchise. They've done great by Mike. They've held him down. They've only had 3 head coaches in the entire history of the freaking program. That's amazing to me.
In that same time span, there have been more popes of the Catholic Church. That is a true fact.
Absolutely right. That's what I'm saying. Why would you leave Pittsburgh? It's hard to find franchises that are faithful, period. So to be at one that is, and everybody keeps trying to kick you out, why are y'all so worried about my damn job if I'm Mike? Please, man, stop worrying about my job. We got some things that we got to work through and some things that we got to work out, and there's more to it. There's so many more politics in the game than people watching the game actually know what's going on behind the scenes. And a lot of times I just kind of stay out of it, Mark, because you just never really truly know what's in everybody's contract and why they're doing what they're doing. But the politics of the games are immense. Even me at tight end, I knew I was going to never be the guy because they were paying Ty Heat $10 million a year. When you're paying somebody that kind of money, dog, I'm not even making $1 million a year. Why would they throw the ball to me 10 times every week? No. Even if I have a game with 10 catches, which I had a couple of them, that next week, I was lucky to get 1 or 2. So it's hey, bro, you got to take it how you can get it. And it's the same thing you see with Isaiah Likely right now and Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews got the bigger contract. So they got to make sure they get their money's worth out of Mark. They'll ease Isaiah, and then when they get the opportunity, as long as they're able to keep him before they feel like Mark is past his prime,
The conversation with Tomlin, I know the Steelers have lost 5 consecutive playoff games.
Yeah.
And I know they haven't had the recent playoff success. There's 2 sides to the coin. Is what I point to is, okay, who have your quarterbacks been, particularly relative to all the studs in the AFC? Because if this goes according to chalk, if the Steelers somehow upset the Ravens, then you got to go on the road against Kansas City. And then if it still goes according to chalk, you got to go on the road against Buffalo. It's not going to happen. Right. So it's I point to who his Tomlin's quarterback's been. The other side of that, though, is Tomlin is so heavily involved in the roster construction. I'm not saying none of the criticism is warranted, but a lot of it, again, I point to where it's been at the end of his career, Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges, Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, none of them have been that elite level of talent or even good to very good for what you need to compete, particularly in the AFC. It's just the reality of the situation. And regardless if they bring back Russ or Justin Fields for next season, I think the Steelers need to operate with the understanding that either of those guys is likely a bridge to who could be potentially the next guy further down the road. How can you go about acquiring that blue chip quarterback, whether that be through the draft, trade, free agency, what have you? But that's my 2 cents worth. What people want to run Tomlin out of town. And look, again, some of the criticism is warranted, but it's like, even if you bring in, say, Ben Johnson or whoever you want to bring in to replace Mike Tomlin, it doesn't solve the fact that you need the horses to win the race, i.e. you need the quarterback to be able to compete when it comes to the playoffs. It's the reality.
I think Mike Tomlin's a hell of a head coach. I think the players love him to death. The players that there, they respect him like crazy. I think Pittsburgh would be I can't say they'll be an idiot because they had him all this time, but I think that would be a huge loss for Pittsburgh if they got rid of Mike Tomlin. He hasn't had a quarterback since Ben got hurt, since Ben really got hurt.
Yeah.
Ben played his last years. He was a fraction of who he was.
Yeah.
He wasn't the Ben that was there when I played. So he hasn't had a quarterback in a while. And to me, the best thing they got on their roster right now is sitting on the bench. Justin Fields should be you guys starting quarterback right now. It's just at this moment, like, you know, like you got a little bit too much riding on it to switch your main quarterback right now going into the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think he will make that call, you know, unless you're getting your ass whooped by 21 points in the first quarter. Then he may take Russ out, put Justin in the first, and then hopefully Justin can bring in some magic. But it has to be something drastic to happen for him to take Russ out, or Russ gets hurt, and then he put Justin in, and then Justin works his magic. To me, Justin is a quarterback that's built for this division, and he's the type of quarterback I think could lead you to the promised land. If you bring the right OC in, he got the right chemistry, all this thing is about confidence and just the player believing that you believe in him and you believe in actually in the player and building him up the way that he should be built up. That's why Russ came in doing so well when he first came in, because there was so much confidence and faith in him, plus a little bit of pressure, you know, taking Justin Fields out with the record that Justin had already had for the team, you know, so he had to kind of beat out that record that Justin had to make people feel like, all right, we did the right thing, you know, and once you got that beat out, then it was like, I don't know what's going on around here now. So, you know, you guys was hot and then all of a sudden you're not. And then now Ravens are super hot right now and you guys are not right now. And anything could happen because this is the Ravens versus Pittsburgh and the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Ravens. And this is truly why they made the movie Any Given Sunday, because on any given Sunday, any one of these teams will whoop your ass and you got to be ready for whatever is to be expected because you have no idea. And the cool thing about it is these coaches know each other so freaking well, you know, that they know all the tendencies. They got all the analytics on each other. They know exactly who you are, who you are on first, second, and third. They know all that. What you're going to do on fourth, they probably know that too. If you got a trick play or two underneath your belt, yeah, they probably know that too. If you go for it on fourth on a fake punt, they probably know what your fake punt play looked like because they've been around each other for so freaking long. And it's going to be a fun game, man. I was actually taking a trip up the road to see this game, and all my flights got canceled, Mark. That's how important this game was to me. I don't even play anymore. And I think I'm starting to turn into a fan. Like, it's so weird because I was never really a fan. I love the game. I love to play the game. But I've never really been a guy that want to sit in the stands and watch a game be played, you know. So it's this year, for some reason, I've kind of gotten into this thing a lot more. And I think I'm really 100% starting to turn into a fan. I don't know what it's kind of weird.
Hey, if we're following the Any Given Sunday script, Daniel, then Justin Fields has to be Steven Willie Beeman, right?
That's it. He got to get in the game and throw up at least 3 times.
Oh, man. That's a great movie. The locker room speech with Pacino in that movie is just, it's
crazy.
Fantastic.
It's crazy. That speech has been on many highlight films over the years. Trust me.
Yeah, I'm just not going into this game. Normally it's like, oh, Baltimore, you know, Pittsburgh's won 8 of 10. They have as good a success against Lamar as any team. I get all of that, but the way that the Steelers are trending going into this game, having lost 4 straight, is that 3 games in 11 days, on the road against Philly, on the road against you guys in Baltimore, and then on Christmas Day against the Chiefs, and then you lose the finale to the Bengals. It's just, it's been a tough stretch. It's been a tough stretch. And two of those
was coming. I knew that was coming, though, Mark. I knew that was coming. And when I saw how hot Pittsburgh was, I was like, they ain't even got to the toughest part of their schedule yet. They got some shit coming towards the end of the schedule, and they got to figure it out quick.
Yeah. It's and here's the thing too with Russ and Fields is the Steelers are paying both of them less than $5 million combined, so they've largely outperformed their contracts. Like this season overall is a success for the Steelers. They were picked to finish last in the division. The over/under was 8.5, so it's just like overall it's been a success. But it's the way that they've closed down the stretch here going into the postseason where it does not inspire a lot of confidence among Steelers fans. And it's like, we've seen this yet again. And we really thought, if you'd have asked me a month ago, Daniel, it'd be like, yeah, the Steelers are going to win a playoff game for the first time, again, since January the 15th of 2017. And that's just, I don't see it happening. I just really don't see it happening. I know with the rivalry, I know with how well they know Baltimore, I do think that would play to Pittsburgh's advantage. But just the way that the team's playing right now, down the stretch of the season, I'm not confident going to this game at all. I'm not.
Well, I'm pretty confident about us going into this game. That doesn't mean anything. I was confident in the AFC Championship game last year when we got our butts whooped in Baltimore, so that doesn't mean much. The confidence going into these things don't account for a whole lot. And then you have to factor in the weather and everything that's going to happen today. They're playing outdoors in an outdoor stadium on a grass field. It's below freezing out there. And it's snowing, and it may be raining, and it may be windy as hell because they're right on the water. You have to account for all those things. It's going to make it almost damn near impossible to throw the ball. And then, usually when you're on a real turf field, you got to have the right spikes or the right cleats. And normally what I would do in these situations is put on like a 3/4 inch spike on the first. I would do screw ins. I wouldn't do molded bottoms, but I would do screw in cleats, and the first 3 spikes on the front of my cleats, I would do the longer 3/4 inch spikes, and then do the 1/2 inch all around the rest of the cleat. And then that would give me more traction to be able to plant and kind of change direction. Because if you try to wear molded in situations like this, you won't be able to take 2 steps without being on ice skates. So it takes some time to get used to it. And as you become older and a more savvy veteran, you kind of know what to put on your feet to start the game. But this is one of those games you're going to see a bunch of guys sliding and falling on the ground, busting their butts. If a running back make one move and he stick his foot in the ground and able to get vertical, you're going to see a bunch of guys sliding right by him and, flying right by him and can't stop. And they try to stop and both of their legs are locked and they just kind of sliding across the turf like that. It'll be one of those funny games, man. You'll see a bunch of mishaps and a bunch of bloopers and stuff. So it'll be interesting. It's going to be interesting because the weather is going to control this game, I think, more than the coaches are.
All right. The last thing I want to discuss with you mentioned Zay Flowers out with the knee injury. It sounds like, at least for this specific game, that it's not really going to make all that much of a difference. Part of that due to the weather conditions.
Correct.
It sounds like that's kind of your sentiment going into this. I'll tell you what, I'm glad that Zay Flowers isn't going to be on the field because this defensive backfield has had some struggles for the Steelers.
Yeah. I mean, if I was a Steeler fan, I would be happy I don't have to see him either. He's one of those guys, like I was just talking about, that can put his foot in the ground and get vertical quick. If he has the right footwear on, he'll make guys look stupid out there in this type of weather. And to me, this is the type of game that you want to throw those short screen passes. You want to throw balls into guys' bodies. So anything with guys coming back to you like curls, comebacks, stop routes, hitches, even slants, not in front of him, but right up in his body. These are the type of games you want to throw more body type balls and body type throws to these guys, even if they're going deep on a deep ball where it can just drop in the bread basket and they don't have to extend away from their bodies and just use nothing but their hands. You want to keep everything tight on your guys' bodies in games like this. Otherwise, you're going to see a bunch of balls, slipping through guys' hands, bouncing up in the air and getting picked off and stuff like that. So these are the type of games that you have to play smarter plays, and having Zay out there would have been huge for the Ravens right now because you can give him those quick screens and he can take it the distance, and he can make 2 or 3 guys miss in the phone booth. And these are the type of games where 5, 6, 7 guys will start slipping and falling all over the place trying to get to him. And by that time, he's so quick and twitchy, he'll be gone. So it's a kind of blessing for Pittsburgh that he's not playing.
Yeah, it's the 2 tight ends, likely Andrews, and then, we're almost 30 minutes in here, and this is a sin I need to absolve. The ground game with Lamar and King Henry and trying to stop that. King Henry absolutely carved us up the last time these two teams played. So
Yes.
you've got your work cut out there. And then TJ Watt's had 3 straight games without a sack. So can he get back into the mix there too? So that, front, what do you want to say, 7-man front, 8-man front, I think largely is going to dictate the outcome of this game, where it's not flashy at all, but it's moving bodies at the line of scrimmage and who can win time of possession and control the football.
Yeah, I would go with that U package a lot. When you see big boy come in the game, 42, Patrick Ricard, both tight ends, and an extra lineman or something like that, and take those receivers off the field, I would go with that a lot. Both tight ends, even Charlie Kolar, I get all 3 tight ends, Patrick Ricard out there, Derrick Henry out there, and have you about 2,000 pounds coming downhill at you, with all those guys, man. And I think I would go that package a lot, and I would run it a lot out of that package, and then I would throw it a lot out of that package, because you got 2 tight ends that are phenomenal. All 3 of those guys can catch the ball, but you just got 2 of them that I think could start for any team in the league right now. And I think they're 2 of the top 5 tight ends, maybe top 10 tight ends in the country right now. And you got both of them on the Baltimore Ravens squad. So I would take those receivers off, make you get some more linebackers out there and trying to run with those guys down the field and put the balls in their hands and let them take over this game. And then good Derrick Henry. You got Derrick Henry, Justice Hill, and Keaton. You got 3 backs that I think could go the distance. Any of those guys could break it, and you can't catch them.
It's going to be tough, and I can't wait to see that bully ball chess match up front of how the two teams match up. And look, whether Lamar can get it done. Again, 2-4 in the playoffs, but Todd Monken as well, the OC who's taken over and really unlocked Lamar. Lamar's played his best ball this past season.
I agree.
But what's going to be remembered is how he performs in the postseason. So even despite the conversation of, is Lamar now a 3-time MVP? Should Todd Monken be considered for another team's head coach? That all rides on the line in a one-and-done scenario that is the NFL playoffs. Cannot wait to see how all that unfolds on Saturday night.
Same here. I agree with you 100%, Mark. 100%. But then you got guys like Dan Marino, and everybody, says he's the best thing since sliced bread, but he never went to a Super Bowl. I'm just saying. I'm just saying, Mark. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Hell, Jim Kelly got put in songs. Go deep like Jim Kelly, and Jim Kelly lost 2 Super Bowls, so I don't know. You figure it out, bro. Like the dude, Lamar is special. He's different. 2-time MVP, could easily be a 3-time MVP this year. He may not get that vote, but I would love to see him get a Super Bowl MVP and a Super Bowl trophy this year.
All right. He is Daniel Wilcox, the host of the Bleav It Ravens show. Daniel, if there's anything else you need to plug with what you're doing, the floor is yours.
Absolutely not, man. I'm just excited, man, Mark, that you brought me on the show, man. Thanks. I love being on the Bleav in Steelers show. I'm a Mike Tomlin fan, everybody, just in case you was wondering. And you guys had a bunch of Steelers that I got a chance to play against and play with. Love them guys to death. So I love the black and gold, not as much as I love the black and purple, but you guys are pretty dope too.
The respect is mutual there, Daniel. I want to thank you. I want to thank the Bleav Network, today's sponsor, BetOnline.ag. If you enjoyed listening to this show, go leave us a 5-star review, Apple and Spotify. I'll be live immediately following the game here on my YouTube channel, so hit that subscribe button. And thanks so much for listening to the Bleav in Steelers show. I'm Mark Bergen. He's Daniel Wilcox. I will see you on Saturday night after Steelers and Ravens. Until then, take care. So long, everybody.